All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being on tonight. We appreciate you spending your evening with us. And I know that this group will probably be small tonight and hopefully will continue to grow. My name is Kim Pickering, the band director at Lewisburg High School. We are so excited again to do this outreach. If it reaches one person, then we have done something. And that's kind of our plan for this. It's a monthly, just have speakers that can help us be better at our craft, which is super exciting. I would also like to introduce, there's a couple other members of our committee on tonight. We have Miss Carrie Swindle. She is at Germantown Middle School. And we have Mr. Ben McLemore, who is at Lewisburg Middle School. When forming this committee, we tried to make sure that we had people from lots of areas of the state, as well as middle school and high school. These sessions won't necessarily be geared just towards high school, as I know there's lots of you that do full programs. So we want to make sure that we give everybody an opportunity to do that. Our guests tonight, and I see one of them, I don't know if the other one can join us or not. One of them is Mr. Johnny Folsom. He is retired from the state of Alabama and helps with Mississippi State University's student teachers, as well as lots of other things. I have learned over the last several years that he is a wealth of knowledge, and just a treasure to be around. Our other guest speaker, if he's able to join us, is Mr. Mickey Smith. He was an educator in the state of Louisiana. He has, in the last several years, been one of the Grammy music educator for the entire country. He now teaches in Florida and is right now speaking to a group of superintendents in Minnesota. And so he is the big time, and he hopefully will get to join us this evening. If you have questions this evening, we do ask that you put those in the chat box, not to keep anybody quiet, but just to make sure that we can answer those efficiently and take care of that. Our plan is for Mr. Folsom to speak for about 30 minutes, and then the rest of the time we have open will be for questions, whether that's related to what he has or not. And hopefully either Mr. Folsom or one of our committee members can answer that. We are also always available for you. And so just because we hop off the Zoom and click end meeting does not mean that your opportunity to reach out to us is gone. There he is. There's Mr. Mickey
Okay.
Smith. He's joining us this
Had
evening.
a technical difficulty. Good to be here today. Good to be here.
That's okay. Wonderful. All right. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Johnny Folsom and Mr. Mickey Smith.
Okay, let me see if I can do this. I've done many presentations, but never one virtually. And Ms. Kim can tell you we've had some issues. Hopefully they have been resolved. They did on our test. What am I doing wrong here, Ms. Pickering?
You're doing great.
Okay.
It says you have started sharing. There it is.
Hey,
All right. Do I click use video, I guess?
Maybe.
I think so. Maybe.
Yeah, right there.
And
You should be
let's see.
good.
Now, where am I? I'm supposed to be over here on the side somewhere, but I don't see myself. Do you remember how to?
If you'll just turn your video on, I think we should be good. If you'll just click that video button in the bottom left corner, and then everybody can see your face.
I have it on. I thought I had it on. That's off. This is on.
Okay. Well, that's okay.
The technology. Okay. Well, we'll just proceed with what we got here. And I do want to, okay, it's saying use video. Let's see if that will bring me up. I think it is. I think I'm over here yeah, I'm way over here. Oh boy, and I don't want to be doing that. Well, I am there in the extreme left bottom, but I can't figure out how to get myself back out of there, so we'll just leave it alone. As Ms. Pickering told you, I retired from Alabama with 25 years of experience, but then I did another 20 years in South Georgia before coming to Mississippi, going on 6 years now, and I'm learning my third state and enjoying every minute of it. The program here is called Making Music, and I've asked Mickey to just jump in anytime he wants to say something because he's been a wealth of knowledge, and he and I have been friends ever since he got the award. In fact, he learned about the article and the cover photo on the Instrumentalist magazine from me. It was during COVID, and his had not come in yet. But anyway, we've become very, very good friends, and he is a wonderful a person that will tag team with me anytime he likes. So not playing notes, but making music. The first slide is long notes are strong notes. Short notes are light notes. Notice how I said that. Strong notes, light notes. And if you just kind of put this kind of for students, especially as they're growing up through the 6th grade, 7th grade, they become to understand that all notes are not created equal. Emphasize the sharps, flats, and naturals that are not in the key signature, and sometimes the ones that are in the key signature. I wanted to make sure that my students always had a pencil, and I did not depend on them having one. I kept a supply and would usually put them out on the first day and check periodically and make sure that when we had an issue that we'd stop and say, I'd say, mark that B flat in that measure, mark that F sharp or whatever it is. I can't emphasize that enough because many people just go in and they rehash the same problems they have day after day after day. And that's not teaching. That's just kind of banging your head against the wall. So
Yeah,
I'm trying to give them some.
Johnny, we were talking a while back, and I was sharing with you a friend of mine who asked me to come in and I guess serve as a mentor, and he wanted me to observe his class, and the class wasn't going great. And at the end of the class, he felt bad, like we all do. It's always awkward to have somebody come in and watch your class, right? And he said, "Hey, I taught them, but they didn't learn it." And we're good friends, so your friends, you can kind of pick with them a little bit. I said, "Hey, man," I said, "if they didn't learn it, you didn't teach it. Like the learning is predicating on the teaching. If you're not teaching, you're just talking." And it opened up a door and a dialogue for us to discuss, okay, what is it? What was the expectation? And did you create a bridge to get from what you wanted them to do in your head to what actually happened out loud? And kind of piggybacking off of what John was saying, my high school band director had this big thing where you had a pencil every day, and even if you didn't have a pencil, you took your imaginary pencil and circled it. And there's something about that physical nature of doing things, touching things. A lot of the kids now, everything is so automated with the phones and everything. I always like to say paper remembers what Mickey forgets. There's something powerful about writing, having that pencil, making those marks. You're making the music experience tailored toward you. Some people play notes, we make notes. That's why I tell them all the time, because the more that you can put that pen or that pencil rather to your music, you're creating a blueprint for how to take it home and practice it in a powerful way. It's just it's so many things that we do in a classroom setting, and Johnny's going to touch on these things as we go along. It has to be an experience. It can't be a sit and get type deal. These kids have to feel like they're a part of it. They have to make it their own. It has to be customizable. Yeah, I don't even know if that's a word, but I just made it up. It has to be something that they can remember, that they can experience, and that they'll never forget. So as we're going through these things, understand it's not just notes, it's not just rhythms. You're taking abstract concepts and making them part of the process in a way where they can not only understand it, but they can embrace it and bring it down to their level.
Absolutely. And you mentioned telling, and I brought in people with my band quite often. And one of the people that I brought in, I doubt if you're young, you know this guy's name, but a lot of people in Mississippi would know him, is Orland Thomas. He was a fine band director in Mobile, Alabama, which is very close to the Mississippi line, as you know, and became the instruction coordinator for the music programs in Mobile County in his latter years. He's passed away now, but he had come up and he was telling me something that the band was doing, and I said, I told them that, and he looked at me and said, Johnny, telling ain't teaching. You have to tell them and retell them and tell them in a different way and so forth and mark it and so forth. My next slide here, you say, is the Macbeth sound pyramid. And if you're like me, I did not hear about the pyramid of sound until I was in about my second or third year teaching. And Macbeth came to Fort Rucker, Alabama. If some of you have heard about that, that's where the helicopter pilots get trained. It was about 22 miles north of where I was teaching. And I found out, went up and just soaked it in. He had been in the 98th Army Band that was stationed there during that time. And this is what I picked up with him. The lower the sound, the louder the sound, the higher the sound, the softer the sound. And you know, it doesn't take but one piccolo to be heard above the band, but you usually have a bunch of bass people to balance things out. Moving on to the next slide, it's a little bit broken down here by the tessiture of the chord and volume, and then also by the woodwind section there as an example with the piccolo, flutes, and so forth going down to the contrabass clarinets.
And and Johnny,
Oh,
one thing that I've found, especially with younger kids, and um, I work with all groups, but my heart is really with the littles. I love teaching little people music. And when I say little people, just so you know, we start in fourth grade. Fourth grade, twice a week. You haven't lived until you try to put on a concert teaching 8-year-olds twice a week. But we do it, and they make very good sounds for their age. And um, I work with them elementary and the middle school, and you're always trying to find ways to make it relevant to them. I think that's the key. How can you make it relevant? And the sound pyramid is something that I adhere to. It's something I found out about a little bit earlier in one of my last years of teaching. We have a professor that really went extensive with it, but I can't say that I really appreciated it until it was time to go to contests and sight reading, MPAs, and all that kind of stuff. And I got 4 scores, and then all of a sudden I said, well, I need to figure out this pyramid thing because balance apparently is a big deal, right? Well, I couldn't figure out how to get the kids to understand it. And one of the things I started doing was we started playing musical chairs. So what I do is I would tell everybody to sit next to somebody who they would never sit next to. I had tubas on the front row, flutes in the back row next to a French horn, and a saxophone next to a trombone player. And what was happening was it was getting their ears tuned up, so to speak. It was making them aware of sounds that they otherwise would have not been aware of because they tend to only listen to themselves or their section. But by mixing everything up, for the first time, we're playing this song, and they're absolutely aware of this tuba sound that I never heard because I sat in the front playing flute. Or the tubas were absolutely aware for the first time of the flute that sat next to them because they never heard them because they were all the way in the back. And then the call to action was, the challenge was, when we go back to our regular seats, can you still hear your friends? Can you still hear those sounds? And without me telling them to play softer, they begin to play softer. And then that opens up the door for the idea of, if you can't hear the person next to you as much as you or louder than you, then the problem is you. You're playing too loud.
exactly. And when we talk about tuning, you want to tune from bottom to top. There again, letting the low voices know that they're actually the most important part of that chord, and that we want everybody listening down to them. And I mentioned my smart tune. I always, when I was younger, I was not the smartest person in band. They'd say, "You're sharp, you're flat," and I would think, now is sharp higher or lower? I couldn't, and all of a sudden, at some point, it hit me. The lower the sound, the bigger the instrument. The smaller the sound, or the higher the sound, the smaller the instrument. So if you are playing too high, you want to make the note, you want to pull out something, whether it's your mouthpiece or your tuning slide or whatever it is on your instrument, to make that happen. And I advocate doing that, especially in the early stages, because there's a lot of folks that won't say anything, but they don't understand the sharp and flat thing. Um, when we go into phrasing, the last slurred note before the tongue note should be short and light. That's just an unwritten rule again. By the way, I picked up a lot of these from mentors in South Georgia. Gene Wiles, who has passed on now, was a director that had this one, and this is a pretty good example if you're familiar with the in-flight thing. Notice lightness on that last note of each of the little groups, and then when you're in 16, when you're in 4/4 time, it's much better not to phrase in phrases of 2 measures or 4 measures, but try to get it to 16 counts worth of phrases. I'm trying to remember what it was, this piece. Da dee da 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 da. Then the breath is there. Um, what is that, Jim? Mickey? I can't remember the name
I'm
of it.
sitting there trying to look. I zoned out for a second
I
because I'm
know
trying to
the
figure out.
piece.
I'm a squirrel. I'm trying to figure out what was that you were singing.
Yeah. Anyway, and then in the 3/4 time, it's better to go 12 counts. Um, and this has a pickup, so it's kind of masked a little bit. But I'm trying to think what this piece is.
Yeah.
Da da dee da 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 dee da 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 da. Waltz number 4. Waltz number 2, isn't it? Shostakovich. So again, da 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 dee da da dee da dee da. Then you breathe and go on to the next phrase and so forth. And all of these will be in the PowerPoint, which you will have access to at the end of the program. Repeated melodic phrases should generally be emphasized more with each repetition. In other words, it's boring if you're playing dee da da dee da da dee da da da, the Mozart thing here, but dee da da dee da da dee da da dum dee da da dee da da dee da da dum. Make sense? Generally emphasize more with each repetition. The rhythm of attack is always being instrumental up and set at least 2 measures before playing. And if you're not teaching that, and you may not be aware, you may be so engrossed in the score, I want to admonish you to try to make sure you're looking up at least every 4 measures at your band and making sure that they're getting those instruments up and their embouchure set, because they'll just wait around some of them and try to slap it up there at the last minute. And you and I both know that's not going to end well.
Yeah, I always try to instill in the kids that the image of like the Olympics. And at the Olympics, if you're running track and field, we all know what they say. On your mark, get set, go. So with my littles, especially for fundamental sake, we teach them on your mark. That means look at the marks of the music. Make sure you're prepared to do what's in front of you. Make sure you're prepared to have that first note ready. Get set. Now you get to embody everything it takes for that note that you're getting ready to do, uh, prior to playing, and then go. On your mark, get set, go. And we explain to them, if you try to go before you're set or before you've looked at your mark, you can't win. You can't win a race. You can't win in music. And what we do is we redefine what rest are. I always tell the kids most mistakes I've heard groups make, when pieces fall apart and different things, oftentimes have more to do with what they do when they aren't playing, losing their spot, not coming back in properly. And what we do is we don't call it rest anymore. We call them cheats, because cheaters always win in band. I always emphasize it in band because I don't want to have a parent conference or my principal later. Cheaters always win in band, right? Meaning when you see a rest, don't do that. That's the worst thing anybody could have called it, because if you tell me to rest, I'm going to take a nap. But in music, we cannot mentally shut down. And we also have to be careful, because you have to understand, with kids, no matter what age they are, the words carry power. They know rest to mean do nothing. So if we don't rewrite the narrative and redefine what a rest is relative to music, they're going to put their own definition of it in. And that usually means shut down, take a break, relax. And that's the last thing we want them to do when we're performing a piece of music. We want them, instead of calling it rest, I call them cheats. How many counts of cheating do you have? Meaning, I need you to look ahead at the coming marks so that you can what? Get set and actually be prepared to go. And set means sit tall, shoulders fall, meet the back, feet flat. It means that we got our eyes on the music. It means we have our embouchure set, our band face, and we breathe rhythmically. 1 up, 2 up, 3 up. And the question is, how do you breathe? The answer is how do. The question is, how do you breathe? The answer is how do. Watch this. The question is, how do you breathe? The answer is how. So now we've made it very specific about what inhalation is. Now I can say I need a better how on this specific part of the beat. Just making it something almost like an adventure or a game. Even for the older kids, they're like, okay, I put my how where I'm supposed to. Okay, my do was a little bit late. And what I find is it helps with the vertical alignment, which is what we're talking about here. Just being ready to come in and coming in a uniform manner.
I love it. That's great, Mickey. All right, the next slide is the priority of parts in a good ensemble performance. The melody should always be the most important part. The harmony is next, the counter melody is next, the rhythmic accompaniment is next, and least important is the sustained harmony. And so many times, as I'm judging, and I'll be judging over in Georgia again this spring, I just hear a good bunch of musicians, but I don't hear a band. And what makes a band is that priority of parts in there. Now, let me tell you a little secret of what I did with my bands. I would record quite often, usually on a Friday, because I could take it home over the weekend and study it and come back on Monday. When we're getting time for a performance, especially an assessment, we'd be doing that every day for about 2 months. Yes, that far out. And I'd get out the recorder the first time the band would go, "You're kidding." I go, "No, I know it's going to be rough, but we're going to do it." We'd record it. I'd come back in. And here's what I'd say. I hear a lot of people trying really hard to play their parts and doing a pretty good job. And then I'd stand there and they'd get funny looks on their face and I'd say, "What's wrong with that statement?" And somebody would finally timidly raise their hand and say, "You don't hear a band." I said, "That's right. I don't hear a band. I hear a lot of people playing their parts, but I don't hear a band." Now, how are we going to get there? Again, puzzled looks on the face. And then somebody will usually raise their hand again timidly and say, "Oh, I know what it is." I turn around first. I get ahead of myself. I turn around when they're looking puzzled and I write on the board in large letters, 3 letters, LTO. And then I turn back around and say, "What do you think that might be?" And somebody then will probably go, "Listen to others." Yes, listen to others. And we'd start rehearsal and I'd play a phrase and I'd stop and I'd look at the first clarinet player and say, "What did the trombones just play?" She'd look at me like, I said, "I'm serious." Start again. Let's go to letter B. We'd play a little section. I'd stop and I'd look at a trumpet player and say, "What did the flutes just play?" And pretty soon somebody will stop. When I stop, they'll go, "The band sounds different." And I said, "Yeah, it's sounding different." People were starting to listen and people were starting to raise their hand and they would sing the line that I asked for. That's what you want. You want that kind of listening in your band.
And I'll tell you this too. So much of what Johnny's sharing right now absolutely works, but keep in mind the presentation of it is everything too. Sesame Street taught me that. Sesame Street taught me that for 50 plus years, these people made 50 plus years, I guess still making it really, of episodes off of a finite number of letters and off of a select group of numbers. I don't even think Sesame Street goes to 1,000. I don't even know if they go to 100. I don't know how far the count actually counts to. But I know this, every episode was centered around 3 basic things: a number, a letter, and a color. And it's kind of like Skittles. How many combinations of episodes can you make out of those things? Well, the answer is 50 plus years. Some people think, oh, there's only so many letters, but the combination of them, they were able to create so much content, so much creativity out of that. And what I'm telling you is when you go into your classroom, what I'm about to say is not restrictive. It doesn't limit what happens in the classroom, but it does give it a focus that people can embrace. You know, if you went, there's a place back at home. I'm from Louisiana. There's bless them, bless their heart, man. They got a little place. It's on the rough side of town. I kid y'all not. I think they just fixed it up because they had a hurricane. But before I left, it said such and such grocery, um, tax, um, car, auto detail, barber, barbecue, chiropractor. Did I say car detailing yet? I said car detailing and something else. And it's one of those things, people in the community would go to this place, but like it's not until you leave and come back home you realize I don't know if I want to get my taxes done where I can get my barbecue and my back cracked. I don't know if I want that. That's just is a little bit too much activity, right? Maybe great, but it's just a little bit too much happening in this little storefront, right? And I think so many times when I go into classrooms now and I'm seeing teachers, because it's easier to see it on other folks, teaching has taught me a lot. It's helped me refine what I do because I get a chance to go into other classrooms. I notice that there's activity but not productivity, meaning, we're just kind of like the wild, wild west. We're just putting out fires everywhere. When your kids really need a theme, right? I need to go to the chiropractor like that. I need that to be I need a specialist, right? And in this case, for example, could you imagine a class where, hey, the theme today is LTO, and we centrally focus on that? Now, that doesn't mean other things can't be solved, but it makes it really clear for the kids to understand what the objective, what the expectation is. Because at the end of the day, a classroom should be like a video game. We have to know how to win. Kids want to know how to win. And that's what helps with retention. We've had great recruitment. I've taught in Louisiana, Texas, and Florida. Every school, every single school I've gone to, we've increased the enrollment of band to 50% of the school population. At its highest, I was at a school where we had 100%. And as great as those numbers may be, the number I'm most proud of is the retention rate because nobody quits. And all these kids aren't great, but they don't quit because every day they make a win. Every day feels like a Wednesday, WINS, a Wednesday. So when your kids come in, is there a clear objective? Johnny makes it clear. I just want to be clear, like the stuff that he's sharing, there's no harm, no foul in saying Monday is going to be prioritization day, maybe Monday melody day. We're going to focus in on cleaning up this melody. We're going to focus in on everybody being able to identify where the melody is at any given point in the music. Tuesday's going to be tuning Tuesday. We're going to work on our intonation on Tuesday. Wednesday, we're going to have warm up Wednesday. We're going to focus in on the sound pyramid. We're going to work on these chorales until we can get that characteristic sound that we want for our ensemble, and then see if we can carry it over to some songs that we already have a little weight and a little value already invested in, and we can kind of play, but we want to take it to the next level. And then every day you have a theme, and it could be one theme, it could be two themes. I wouldn't do more than three things because the brain, too much stuff, right? Multitasking is not real. But as we go through this stuff and we unpack it, the challenge is not just on you to get the information, but to think about, okay, how can I present it where kids know this is a priority for the day?
Yes. And that's the type thing you want to make sure they feel excited when they leave, that they have learned something. And that's something I think sometimes we forget. We push and push and push, but we don't let them know that you're making progress. You are really making a difference. All right, the next slide here, we're talking about the articulation styles in visual. Obviously slurred, unless you're a trombone player, you're just moving your fingers. You're not doing anything to break up the air. And then legato is what trombones have to do to slur. You have a little bump with your tongue, but it's not going to be a space. Then the natural articulation is going to be a slight space. Then you've got staccato, and you see the staccato there with a small looking note value with space in between. And then the accent, which is stronger and separated. All right, where are we here?
Oh,
There's our
one thing,
next.
if one thing
Okay.
with the if we can go back to that slide on the articulation, um,
Don't know if I can get
it's
back.
okay. No worries, no worries, no worries. The articulation, one thing, me and Johnny have a mutual friend, Dr. Quincy Hilliard, and
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Hilliard would come to my classroom, and when he would come, he loved working with the class, but every so often he'd come, he'd say, Mickey, can you play? He had a song he liked. Y'all got to know Dr. Hilliard. Johnny, do they know Dr. Hilliard out there? I don't know. Do- he's good people. Dr. Hilliard, if you meet him, you can't forget him. He's a hoot. Uh, but he would always say, Mickey, can you play Uptown Funk? And I'm like, I wasn't expecting Dr. Hilliard to want to hear Uptown Funk. but I'd play it, and man, this is when Uptown Funk was just coming out, and the kids were clapping, they were singing along, and there was such a good energy, a good spirit in the classroom when I played it. And he told the kids something I'll never forget. He said, "Your band director plays with a lot of spirit. That's why I asked him to play that." He said, "But you guys can play with that same spirit." And they kind of looked because they like, "Man, we can't play like Mr. Smith, beginners." And he said, "No, you can." He said, "The secret's in front of you." He said, "On your music, y'all are just playing notes, but there's something called spirit markings." And when he said that, I'd never thought of it like that. See, the articulation is what gives it the enunciation. The articulation is what allowed me to play Uptown Funk and the kids could hear, "Dance, dance, scream, hallelujah, woo." They all knew when to say woo on the song because they could hear the words. So I changed what I started saying. I don't say that I play my horn, I say my horn now. I say my horn. And I explained to them the same way B.B. King made Lucille talk, I can make my saxophone talk. I can make it speak. Tomorrow, I'm going to be speaking to a group of leaders in Minnesota, school district leaders, superintendents, school board members. And at some point in this presentation, I'm going to make them mimic what my horn is doing. We're going to have a conversation, and people don't think that's possible. But just like B.B. King was able to make Lucille talk, kids can make their instruments talk. But it only works when we utilize the spirit markings. So how do we get everybody in the same spirit? Well, when it comes to slurs, every note is tongued. And kids are like, "No, slurs aren't tongued." That's the first fallacy I have to break. No, slurs are tongued. The first note of the slur is tongue. I learned that because there was a band director I watched when I was in college. I go observe him, and I walked into his classroom. He had about 100 students in beginning band woodwinds, by the way, packed. It had to be a fire hazard. There's like 100 kids in this little room. And I walked down I walked in, he was on the podium. I had never met him before, per se. Definitely hadn't been to his class. And my first experience with Mr. Murray was he stood on the podium and he said, "Ti ti ta ya 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 ya." And 100 kids said, "Ta ya ti ti ta ya ya." And he said, "Ta ya ta ya ta ya ta." They said, "Ta ya 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 ti ti ta ya ta ta ti." And I thought, what is going on? That was the craziest thing. And I began to understand that for every note that was tongued, he said ta. For every subsequent slurred note, he said ya. So ta ya or ta ya 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 ya, ta ya ya ya. And I thought, wow, what a cool way to quantify, so to speak, to make it a little bit, this abstract thing a little bit more concrete. And then I began to look for other ways to make those abstract ideas concrete. Well, slurs are ta ya. Staccato is the dot means dit, D-I-T. And anytime I have an accent, I don't know why this works, but I promise y'all, if you do it, it will change your life. I don't know why this works. It makes no sense. Accents are ding, D-I-N-G. It's the most ridiculous thing. If you make kids say ding, ta-ya, dit, 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 ding, ta-ya, dit. If you make them say ding, I promise you, the accent is just going to magically happen. I have not figured it out. I'm sure somebody's done a study on it. They've done research. I haven't. All I know is it works. So finding a way to put a word to anything that you do and give it a name tag, that's one of the most powerful ways to take that visual concept that Johnny just shared and make it audible, because if they can say it, they can play it.
Mm-hmm. All right, our next slide here is starting a crescendo softer than the preceding phrase. Again, the mistake they make so many times is they just try to go on up from where they are. Always back off a little bit and don't affect the change without disturbing the tone and quality and balance. All right, the part two of this series um, gets us into rehearsals. Every day is where music is made. We used to host the assessments both in South Alabama and in South Georgia when I was over there in those two places. And I would tell my students who would have to be hosts during the day that they would see some bands that would come in there and they had been goofing off all the time. And on the day before, they decided to clean their horns, get a new reed, and try extra hard. I don't want you doing that. None of that. Rehearsal every day. We're going to play on the stage just like we play every day in rehearsal. And that's where the music is made. The kids buy into that, they're going to set a really good work ethic. But if they don't, think about it. If they clean out their brass instruments, the intonation's going to change. They get a new reed, they're probably going to squeak. Uh, you want to keep things normal every day. And I'd also tell you to tell them that here is and you can't see me, I don't think, but I put my hand up here. This is where a one is. Most people aim for that level. We're going to aim way
Mm.
higher than that. And so if we know on the day of evaluation, we're probably going to have a little nervousness and this kind of thing. So if we slip, we're still going to be okay. Whereas the folks that are aiming for the one, they're going to slip or they're going to be down below it. Uh, and you want to inspire them. And that's part of what I just did, inspiring the students. Students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's a
Johnny,
say.
like that's so on time right there. Somebody just put in the chat. Oh, it's Lily. Hi, Lily. Currently student teaching at elementary school. What advice would you have for working with students who refuse to participate after multiple attempts of encouragement? What you just said, keep encouraging them. I know that
Yes,
sounds so simple, but what you have to understand is, and what I it took me a while to understand is, modern day teaching is relationship based teaching, and that doesn't mean
absolutely.
that you're necessarily their friend. And look, I'm gonna go ahead and say something that may be controversial. Look, I'm not politically correct. I just call it like I see it. When you're an adult, I don't think you really need a 10-year-old friend. Okay, that never works out good for adults. Like, I don't think that, it's just not a good thing. There's enough grown-up friends to have. Go find a grown-up friend. I'm talking to all my young teachers out there. You don't need a 17-year-old friend. You can be friendly to your students, but what I'm talking about today, when I talk about relationship, it doesn't mean that they're my friends. None of my students are my friends. Not when I've had students that graduate and grow up, and there's some of them I do consider friends now. There's some of my students, I've been teaching long enough. Some of the kids I started in beginning band, I now call them colleagues and friends. But I would have never called them my friend while they were still in school. But I was friendly. What am I telling you? The kid that doesn't want to participate, there's usually an underlying reason. So part of your
Absolutely.
job as a director, you have to be a behavior detective. And watch
Yeah,
this, Lily, I need everybody to hear this. Don't take it personal. Make it personal. Don't take it personal. Because at the end of the day, there's a reason they don't drop car insurance rates until 25. Okay? They've done the math. We're not reasonable until maybe, mid 20s. They've done the math. You can't even rent a car if you're 18. Like, so if you can't rent a car when you're 18, if you can't serve in the military when you're 17, if you can't handle a firearm legally or own one when you're 15, if you can't do these things, then we also can't expect them to process and operate from an adult standpoint. I'll say this too, and I'm not saying this to condemn anybody today, so don't feel bad. I hope I'm not coming off in a negative sense, but I need you to understand this. When you say things out loud, it makes sense. Children are going to be childish. I'm going to say that again. Somebody need to catch that. Children are childish. Like, when you say it, doesn't it make more sense? Of course they're childish. Here's the question. Are the adults going to be adultish? Meaning, being a father, being a dad has taught me that part of my job is to have perspective and to have patience. Meaning, I have to continue to plant seed even when I don't see that it's sprouting. Because the truth of the matter is, many, and I'm fortunate because the Grammy and some other things that have happened in my life have 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 unnaturally caused people to come back and tell me what their experience with me has been. Whereas most teachers never truly know how impactful they were on the lives of some people. Some teachers never fully
absolutely.
know it. So I'm telling you today, that kid that's not participating, do this. Look for ways to see if there's an underlying reason why they're not participating. Maybe they failed tremendously before you got there. Maybe other kids are picking on them. Maybe they just don't have a level of esteem or belief in themselves. Maybe they don't do well in front of others. Maybe they would benefit from a one-on-one session or a small group session. Maybe if you show up at their basketball game and see them do something outside of school, they kind of open up and trust you a little bit more, because if you develop trust, then that opens up the door to relationship. From relationship comes influence. Now you can influence them and then you can instruct them. But you can't influence them if there's no trust, and you can't have relationship if there's not trust. And as a student teacher, sometimes that's hard because you don't always have the time, because you only have a semester. So you may not have the time invested to break through that. But this is a great training ground. Do not let this one experience define the entire experience of teaching. This is your lab to cultivate that muscle. And if you can get this win with this student, then you write that down in your journal, write down how you're able to make an impact on them, and keep that in your back pocket, because if you did it once, you'll be able to do it again.
Absolutely. Been there, done that. Absolutely. Listen to what Mickey's saying. Next slide. Where is your standard? Telling ain't teaching. That goes back to that one I told you about Orland Thomas. You can't just tell them. You got, as Mickey is a master at this, of going back and thinking of a different way of saying what you just said, a different way of teaching what you just taught. The next slide is breathe musically in the tempo of the music. You know, kids don't know that intrinsically. You got to let them know to make sure to take those slow breaths, but deep breaths when you're playing slowly, but fast in the tempo, in other words. Intonation.
One way,
Okay.
the rhythmic breathing, one piece that we do at the very, very beginning, I'm talking like fourth grade, we first get them. I teach them anytime I need them to start a piece of music. I don't say, here we go, band. Hey guys, be quiet. Hey, here we go, set. I don't say that. I say, you start it, ready, you say, and the band knows to say 1 up, 2 up, 3 up. How? I teach that from ground level before we even put instruments together. That's one of the first things we teach. Why? Number one is a classroom management technique. Because when they're talking, what I found out is they just want to talk. They don't even care what they're saying. I just give them what to talk. When I say you start it, ready, you say, I learned that because one day I was walking through the mall with my wife, and as we were walking through, somebody went, and immediately I stood at attention in the middle of the food court, and my wife was like, you're such a band dork. I I've been in marching bands so long, it's been burned in my brain. When I hear a clap at a certain cadence, I was ready to go to attention. I was like, band, 10, hut. It's just in me. I didn't even think about it. And that's the type of indoctrination. Hope that's not a bad word, but it's just what it is. That's the type of indoctrination that I want to make sure I do. There's certain qualities of the band experience that I want to teach from day one. So now in my class, if I say you start it, ready, you say, no matter what they're doing, everybody immediately stops and says 1 up, 2 up, 3 up, how. Now, why am I telling you that? Because when I can put how on beat 4, I teach them to fill up the entire beat with a breath. Why? Because I'm going to go slow at first. 1 up, 2 up, 3 up. It's rhythmic breathing. But then I'm going to change tempo on occasions, especially as we get into, 7th and 8th grade band. I'm changing up quite a bit. Why am I changing it? Because I want to give them the template for how to breathe quick. 1 up, 2 up, 3 up. Because they know what comes in has to come out in time. So if I make that a staple, and then I start incorporating it into my warm-ups and I change the tempo, then when I get to a certain piece that requires a certain type of breath, I can say I need a quick howl. And that actually means something. And quick howl is so much better than this long drawn out thing that would normally take 5 minutes to explain and draw out. It's just quick howl, long howl, slow howl, big howl. And now, because we've done it so much, there's some weight to this concept of how.
Okay. Intonation, a big pet peeve of everybody, but I tell you, it's more in your head. If you can sing the pitch, you can play your pitch. Play in the center of the pitch, of course. But here's the deal. I maintain that if you put your instrument's tuning device in relatively the same place most all the time, you listen, you can make the sounds in tune. I'm a trombone player and I'll demonstrate it. I usually stand up and play a concert F, and I slowly slide the slide out almost all the way to third position, and I can hold it on pitch. And if I can do that, the students can learn to do that as well. You find that place where they normally play in tune, and if they're a little bit off, if they're singing it in their head, they're going to be affecting it. And that got me a free T-shirt with School Band and Orchestra magazine back in the day when they asked about a pitch for their magazine. The next slide is the more notes, the more patient we are. Have you found out that your bands tend to rush when you have 16th notes? Oh, yes. Fast music is fast and rhythmic fingers. Don't rush, subdivide. Slow music is slow and rhythmic fingers. Don't drag, pop the fingers. Yes, even as slow, you want to pop them. They tend to drag the fingers down, and that creates problems. Where you breathe shapes the phrase. Embrace and stagger breathe quite often. In fact, there's a piece I'm going to give to you at the end of the program today that will demonstrate that. And it's a band that I had in my 6th year of teaching, and they're 7th grade through 12th grade. I'll tell you more later. The bar lines are not for breathing, pretty much. There are exceptions, of course, but for the most part, we want to keep those lines moving across the bar lines. And then we have the types of notes that we play. There's notes that go to somewhere. There are notes that are coming from somewhere, and there are notes that are there. Does that make sense? Okay. And then you want to embellish the phrase by playing across the bar lines. Nuance, the implied crescendos and decrescendos. I always encourage my students when I'm trying to learn those lines, get your pencil out and draw your little crescendo in here. Now draw a little decrescendo in there. And after a while, it becomes second nature. But as they're learning, I really think that that is a really good way. Instead of coming back and fussing the next day, they're going to see it and they're going to be more tending to do the crescendos and decrescendos. Be proactive. Make the musical decisions without being asked. In other words, interpret. When I was young, I was scared to turn in a score to my evaluators and my judges. If I changed anything, any kind of dynamic, any kind of this, that, and the other. And finally, one of them pulled me aside and said, Johnny, when you're playing music like you're playing music, you don't have to explain things to us. Make musical decisions. Interpret the music. Don't try to be so black and white. And then you want to hide individually. If you're sticking out, something's wrong, right? Lose your identity. Blend into the sound of the person sitting next to you. That's what you want to teach your folks to do. Can you hear that person on the other side of you? Can you hear the other person? Are you in tune with them? Are you blending? And the secondary parts are important. A lot of times you want to bring that out in rehearsal. Hey guys, you are important on that part down there. I know you may not think you are, but yes, you are. And melody, you need to be listening down to them. Play with the best tone quality regardless of the volume or tempo. You know, younger the kid especially, they'll play with a big full sound at a forte, but they usually play with not much support down there at a piano or certainly a pianissimo. But you've got to teach them how to keep that stomach tight and pushing regardless of the volume or tempo. And then changing the dynamic without changing the tempo. Again, that's especially the younger the groups, the harder it is. They want to play faster when they play louder. They want to play slower when they play softer. Got to get them to rehearse.
And you know that slide and everything you've talked about. One thing is important for us to remember is for many kids, the implementation of these concepts are far more approachable in a warm-up than it is in the actual song. That doesn't mean don't do it in the song, but there's some great books out there. You know, I don't get anything from saying this. I really like the book, The Habits, Scott Rush. Um,
Hmm.
it's a simple looking book. I'm gonna be honest. Colleague of mine, he was actually my student teacher. He was the assistant there. He brought it to my attention, which got my attention because he doesn't really get excited about a lot of stuff, but when he does, he's got a good radar for things. And he said, well, we should get this book. I'm like, hey, if you think we ought to get it, order it. Go get it. I trust him, you know? And the book came in. And again, I know Scott personally, he's good people. I don't mean anything by this. I'm just being real with y'all. When the book came in, I'm like, this is it? I just expected more. It didn't look like much, but it is a great book. It looks very simple, but that's really oftentimes all they need. And from those simple exercises, whether it's the Remingtons or the long tones or the whole tone patterns they have in there, or the approach that they have for building up scales and their ability to perform it, there are so many musical things you can work on. There's even a passage that a page that works on start, sustain, and release type situations. And what we can do is we can take all the things that Johnny's talking about and apply it into there. You know, put the TE tuner on the big screen. And when you do your long tone Remingtons, can we keep it green? Can we, when we play, can we make those adjustments and dynamics like he talked about? When we play, can we lose ourselves in the identity? Can we lose our identity in the course of the band? Not just saving those concepts for a actual piece of music, but front loading them being able to do it in the warm up so that all you have to do then is a carryover from the warm up into the actual song. Warm ups are not just to get the horn warm. Warm ups are not just to try out a scale or to kind of get in tune. Warm ups are the laboratory to develop what you're going to put into action in the field. And the field is the song, the lab is the warm up.
Well, to the director now, those of you out there, everyone sees the director, but is everyone watching and adjusting to what they see? Um, I'm a full believer, firm believer that you should be looking up out at the band at least every 4 measures, and you will be surprised at what you see. You want to encourage the students to do the same. Try to glance up at me at least every 4 measures and see, and then try to, um, again, hosting the assessments, the festivals, we see all kind of directors, mostly band correctors. They're just beating time. If you show them the differences in dynamics, the differences in nuance, all this kind of stuff from the podium, and you get them conditioned to look up at you within 4 measures, and you're looking out at them, you're connecting. And I promise you, it'll take a while to get used to it. Take a while for them to get used to it, but you will notice a huge difference in the band when you start giving those decrescendos and crescendos, and they're watching you and listening to each other. And this brings me to the next one. Are they hearing or are they listening? Are they just hearing it or are they really listening? Everybody hears music, but listening is adjusting to what you hear. And there we go to that LTO that I mentioned earlier. I highly recommend using that sometime, when you record and you come back and do some work, stopping them and asking, what's this other section doing? Embrace your technology. Oh my gosh. When I started teaching in 1974, I had a huge, heavy, big old tape machine that you had to put a reel on one side and pull across the tape to an empty reel. You couldn't take it home. It was so hard. And then they came up with records that I could play for the students, and then a cassette tape and all. Gosh, you got so much on your phone right now. I don't care if you think it's not the greatest, it's way better than what I had. And you can record them often and take it home and use your scores. And I promise you, you will find so much that you did not know you were missing when you're going about it. The final slide here is the piece I want you to hear, and I hope this is going to work. Ms. Pickering and I had trouble early. I had my tech person from Mississippi State come out and help me, and I think this is going to work. Are any of you familiar with Chant and Jubilo from Francis Macbeth? Anybody? This is a pretty challenging piece, about a grade 3.5, maybe 4. And the band you're going to hear is Geneva High School. If you see over there, we made a superior rating at state contest, and that year we took a trip to Opryland, which was a theme park at that time, played on the Grand Ole Opry stage, and we came in second out of 22 bands to that band from Texas you see right there. I felt pretty good about our band. I'm in my 6th year teaching with 7th through 12th grade. Most of these bands are 9 through 12, if not 10 through 12. So take a listen, and I think you'll see and hear some of the things that we've been talking about demonstrated. Listen how long they take the phrases and where you can't hear the breaths. Here we go. I hope it's working.
Folsom, I think we may have lost the recording.
So it played for a while and then quit?
Yes, sir. It played some and then was cutting out after that. Was anybody else getting a full recording there?
Mine was
It was coming through fine for me.
me
It
too.
was?
Fabulous.
All right.
Fabulous. Keep
Picking it-
playing it.
Picking it back up then. Here we go. Let's see if I can get it to go. There you have it. And there, if you would like a link to the presentation, you can take a shot of that QR code and you should be able to pull up the each of the slides and so forth in case you want to look at it further. I've tried to figure out a way. Well, never mind. That's fine. I need to stop my share now, right? Ms. Pickering?
Yes, you can.
All right, I'm stopping my share and I should show up over here so you'll know what I look like over here, I think. Well, where's my video? Can you see me?
Not yet.
I don't.
Not yet.
Doggone it. So the technology's got me on the video today. I don't know what's going on. It was showing me, I just was off the screen a while ago. Use video. Oh well.
Thank you
I
so
am a real
much, Mr.
person.
Folsom and Mr. Smith tonight. We appreciate you guys being here so very much, and what a wealth of information this evening. This will be recorded. It has been recorded and will be posted on the ASBDAband.org website for anybody that would like to go back and reference that or share it with any friends or anything. And we are so excited to be able to do this once a month, and we hope that this will continue to grow and reach out to young directors. And I learned a ton tonight, and I'm so excited to be able to be here with you guys tonight. Are there any questions, any further questions that we'd like to quickly post? I think our Zoom is going to come to an end at 8:15.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Kim. It's just wonderful, wonderful what's happening here. And by all means, if there's ever anything that I can do to help support, I'm always there. Even if it's the posting of your upcoming events, get as many people in this room as possible, because this is a great energy, great questions tonight. Some were directed toward the whole group, some were individual. I appreciate that, and I hope you guys felt your time was valued tonight, because I definitely appreciated and enjoyed it.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Mickey. I really appreciate you.
We do have one question that popped up. If either one of you want to take a glance at that, if anybody wanted to answer that really quickly.
What is it?
What do
What's
you say to get students to connect to the physical effort required for dynamic changes like crescendos, decrescendos, forte pianos? Do you have any buzzwords or systems to achieve these concepts? For me, like I said, a big part of it is I incorporate it into the warm-ups, and we don't approach it like, for example, when it comes to the clarinet break, I never talk about the word break. I never. That sounds hideous and painful and dangerous. It's just something you do. And if you approach it in a winnable way, so, do it, think about what can you do to where they can feel a success. And then once they feel a success, then add another level of difficulty on top of it, so you don't just drown them in something, but you're habit stacking, you're scaffolding it up. I think that them doing it and finding a level of success in it is as powerful as any buzzword. And y'all know I love buzzwords, but I just think some things are taught and some things are just caught. They have to catch that. They have to do it.
Yeah, agreed.
Somebody says, how do you prioritize tuning your ensemble without spending too much time on pushing in and pulling out on slides? I have 45-minute periods for seventh and eighth grade, hour and a half block, high school. High school isn't much of an issue, but I still feel like I spend too much time on occasion. However, I do not feel like I can spend any time on junior high. Okay, so for me, what I do is, before we talk about tuning the instruments, we tune the mouthpieces, because I found that if they're fundamentally flawed in their embouchure set, then it makes it really difficult for me to do anything else. And of course, you check instruments too, because sometimes it could be an issue with the horn itself. But I found that if I can get my flutes on a A pitch on their head joints, covered and uncovered, that goes a long way. If I can get my clarinets mouthpiece barrel on a concert F sharp, that goes a long way. I like to put my alto saxes on a A flat. Some people like A. I like A flat because it's a little flatter, and they always tend to go sharp anyway. So I like to keep it on A flat. And I have a distinct pitch for every single mouthpiece or mouthpiece neck combination. And once I get them locked in, then the tuning element of it, it becomes very, very easy because, as Johnny said, they're relatively in the right place. If the mouthpiece is tuned, then the instrument is tuned because the instrument is actually the mouthpiece. The instrument is that we call the instrument is actually the amplifier. So we want to make sure we tune the instrument and not the amplifier first. And like I said, once I'm able to do that, everything is easier. I just use a keyboard, a little cheap. I had a Casio for years, just a little cheap Casio keyboard, and I didn't have time to pick up every single instrument. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm not that great of a musician. I don't know that I can pick up a bassoon and be perfectly in tune, picking it up cold turkey. I can't just pick up an oboe without wetting the reed up and just play it perfect. But I can get that relative sound, and I can definitely get a definite pitch off of a keyboard, and I just patch in the sounds. I hit the button, flute sound, boop. I hit the button, clarinet sound. I don't have perfect pitch, so don't quote me on these pitches I'm squawking out. I get the saxophone sound, I hit it out. And then for brass players, we're always doing mouthpiece exercises. I joke with my students and say, brass players shouldn't have all the fun. We can have fun too. Let's play on our mouthpieces. And once we get those instruments in tune, those instruments, the mouthpieces in tune, everything else becomes exponentially easier to the point where tuning becomes probably more indicative of Daniel of what you're thinking it should be. Like it shouldn't take this long. And it doesn't once you get those mouthpieces in tune. But that takes a moment, but it's worth the time because once they got it forever.
And I'm telling you, the way I do mine or did mine was playing going through your exercises and then playing a chorale and slowing it down, making sure they're watching, looking at people, individuals, going to my ear. Well, you can't see me. I'm pointing to my ear. Are you sure? And as they hold that last note, I pick out 4 or 5 each rehearsal, and then I'll say, prove it. Make them play it, look at my tuner, smile, or pretty close, or whatever. And pretty soon you'll be very surprised at how much better they'll listen and their ears will take them there. I'm telling you, but if you only do it once or twice and then you quit, it has to be a daily thing. Don't go around tuning everybody. Don't say you pull out, you push in. Don't do that. Just pick 3 or 4 random students, adjust them if you have to, but more often get them to the place where they don't have to adjust, and the problem goes away. Anything else
Awesome.
out
Thank you
there?
guys so much.
I wish they could see what I look like, but I don't know what
Right.
happened with it.
Thanks.
Well,
Thank
thank
I
you
just wanted
again
to
for
say,
spending your, yeah,
sorry.
no, you're good.
I talk faster than I type. Just going back to the tuning conversation. So 7th grade, 8th grade, high school. I appreciate that advice. I can use that for sure. Beginner band, 6th grade. I have about 30 minutes with them, and it's in a elementary school cafeteria. How do I teach tuning to 6th grade band, or is that something that I just let them use their voices and their ears to teach them now,
No,
and then expand upon it later when they get into a band hall where
no,
5-year-olds aren't having food fights?
yeah, I get it. No, I mean, I teach tuning to 4th grade. I just don't really talk about it because I only have them for 30 minutes. By the time I walk them down, put the instruments together and walk them out, I probably have 15 minutes worth of actual time. So I don't unpack a lot of the things. It's more like martial law. It's just do what I say. We'll explain it later, right? But what I do, the easiest way that I can tell you is there's always 1 or 2 that sound good. Always. When the one sounds really good, play a game. I tell them it's illegal, but we're going to do it, kids. It's called cloning. Don't tell your parents we're cloning people today. It's illegal, but we're doing it. We'll do it in band. What do you mean, Mr. Smith? Hey, Susie just played fantastic. I wonder if Rebecca can clone her sound and make it sound just like that. I wonder if we can have 2 flutes, but we can only hear one sound. You think that's possible?
Right.
Awesome. Thank you so very much. And thank you guys so much for spending your Wednesday evening with us. We know it's not the best day of the week, but we appreciate you guys being here. I hope that you all learned something tonight. I know that I did. And we hope that you will join us for our monthly meetings, and I'll send out some more information. If you have any questions, my email, the rest of our committee's email is at the bottom of the email that you received with the link for this meeting. Always feel free to reach out. If we don't know the answer, we'll be more than happy to find someone that does. So thank you again for being here. And again, this meeting will be recorded and posted on the ASBDA website. Mr. Smith, Mr. Folsom, thank you so much again for spending your evening with us. And we appreciate all of you. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Okay.